Hello and welcome to Eva's House of Spirit. I'm Eva, and I want to talk to you again today about protective magic that falls into the offensive and defensive categories. I want to talk about the difference a little more. In the first video I made, I said that offensive magic tends to be better for when you are aware of a clear and present danger, where defensive is good for more general sort of protection when you don't have a clear and present danger, but there is still potential there for harm to come to you, so you're just kind of generally protecting yourself. I think I take that back, because there are exceptions. For example, in the defensive category, return to sender spells fall. In order to do a return to sender, there can be some exceptions to the rule. If you are not aware of who sent the work, you can still do it. So that would fall into my my original thought that if you are not aware of the source of a danger, it would be defensive. But there are times, sometimes, when you do know. So that would kind of be the exception to the rule. On the other hand, for example, take a traditional witch bottle, which falls under the offensive category. It's not like you're directing that at someone in particular, so that would also kind of be an exception to what I said. So I think I retract that statement. It's not always true, now that I think about it, that offensive protection magic is better suited to when there is a clear and present danger that you are aware of, like if you know the source. That's not necessarily true, because sometimes you don't know the source. And the same is true for defensive protective magic. Sometimes you do know a clear and present danger, but you choose defensive stance instead of offensive stance in your technique. And now I'd like to point out 3 examples of each offensive and defensive protective magic. 3 examples right off the top of my head of offensive would be the traditional witch bottle, fiery wall of protection products, being used in work, or there's a technique where you would bury knives in the perimeter of your property facing outward. Those would be protective measures, but they're more in the offensive category because they use the concepts of like fire, heat, sharp things to attack negativity or enemies. Defensively speaking, there are techniques such as shield visualizing, protection baths, or return to sender. These are just 3 examples. There are far more, but I just thought I would use 3 for each off the top of my head just to illustrate the difference. Traditional witch bottle, it gets its aggressive nature from the sharp things that are inside of it. I looked around on YouTube watching videos, a lot of different videos that people have made about witch bottles, and it seems that a lot of people don't like the whole concept of peeing into the witch bottle, I think. So they tend to have adapted their witch bottles to be a little different. But I prefer the traditional method of making a witch bottle, where you would put sharp things like bent rusty nails, thumbtacks, broken glass, broken mirror shards, anything sharp, needles, pins. You would put that into a bottle, and then you would pee in the bottle, and then you would seal up the bottle, and you'd bury it on your property somewhere where it wouldn't be disturbed. Or if you can't bury it, you could hide it in your house somewhere where nobody will tamper with it. That's my preferred method of the witch bottle. But the sharp things inside, they're aggressive in nature, so that's what puts it more in the offensive category of protection magic. Fiery wall of protection, that's a little more offensive too, because it has that aggressive, fiery quality to it. It literally puts up a fiery wall of spiritual energy around you that if anyone were to try to harm you, they would receive a pretty bad backlash, from what I understand. As for the knives, I mentioned them briefly, and now I want to go into that a little bit. In group, we were talking about using common items for uncommon. I'm sorry, using uncommon items for powerful magic, and the topic of knives came up, and I suggested that if you were to take 4 like stainless steel knives, the kinds that you would cook with, you could actually charge them for protection. You could bury them on the perimeter of your property, like facing outward, but you'd have to bury them deep enough that no one would accidentally be likely to uncover them, and they would create sort of a boundary on your property that would be aggressively protective. And I think that being that they're knives, and knives tend to be a domestic tool, they're very well suited for protection of home. So that's another method. As for defense, shield visualizing is like one of the easiest techniques. You literally visualize a shield around yourself, and you know it's there. You empower a shield to be around yourself. It would set up that psychic energy shield. Protection baths, there are countless protection herbs. Usually I like to use odd numbers because I feel for some reason there's power in odd numbers. And you would steep those or boil those up in hot water, and you would then strain that, and then you'd pour that into your bath, and you would bathe. And some people have variations on how they would go about the spiritual bath process. I tend to just keep it simple. I just believe that the herbs themselves have power, and that when I add them to my bath and I bathe in them and then I let myself air dry when I come out, that the energies that are in those herbs inherently will imbue themselves onto me and affect my life in whatever way they happen to be naturally inclined. Like if I was to use, for example, roses and honeysuckle and like cinnamon, I'd have that energy of love around me. Or if I was, in terms of protecting, I would probably use something like ginger is really good, because back to the fiery concept, it's a fiery herb, but also bay leaves are very protective. And if I was to name a third off the top of my head, well, maybe sage. It's cleansing, but I guess because the power of its sanctification, it can be also considered protective. I'm sorry if I'm a little off today. I feel like I'm just a little out of it. I mean, I literally just woke up. So back to different techniques. Return to sender. I'm going to demonstrate this in another video, but just to touch upon it, it's a method where you are essentially saying, like, thank you, but no thank you, take your crap back. I am not going to accept the crap that you sent my way. And you're basically reflecting any ill will someone has sent you. You are sending it right back to them. It's like a no thank you. You're not aggressively attacking that person. You're like, no. It's like blocking a punch. Like in martial arts, they try to hit you, you block it, you deflect it, you disarm that person. So yeah, those are some examples to help you to understand if you are having a hard time kind of like I mean, I'm not saying that you do, but in case you have a hard time following my point that there are two kinds of protective magic, I thought that I would just illustrate briefly some examples. And again, I'm going to keep revisiting this topic. I want to show you some really in-depth examples. I have some ideas that are a little outside the box for how to do offensive and defensive protective works, but I just wanted to like lay the groundwork so that you would really understand what the heck I'm talking about when later on I'm like, offensive or defensive, you'll be like, yeah, I follow you, I got you. Not that I'm not questioning your intelligence, I'm not insulting your intelligence, I'm not trying to say that, what I'm saying is so complex, because really it's not, but I just want to be sure that I really explain myself in a way that I haven't left anything out. So that's pretty much it for right now. I have to get ready. I have to hop in the shower. I have to get dressed and get ready to go to work. But I thought, I would just talk a little bit more about offense and defense, and I'm going to revisit this in more depth in the future. I just really wanted to continue to touch upon this topic. I would love to hear from you if you would like to comment on your thoughts on what you would deem offensive versus defensive approaches, or even if maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you have points to make that really, maybe you think that I don't have a point here, and if you could maybe, illustrate that, that would be fine. Tell me your point of view, because maybe I'm missing something, and maybe you can point that out to me, and maybe I can learn from you. So if you have any comments, ideas, thoughts, feelings on the topic of this video or the one that I made before this in regards to offensive or defensive magic of a protective nature, I welcome your comments. If you like this video, please be sure to like it, and I welcome you to subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Blessed be and Ashe.